All right, well, let's get started. Yeah, welcome everyone. My name is Jenny Karr. I'm the CEO here at Tailored Fundraising. Joining me and presenting is the wonderful Deb Evans, and running things behind the scenes are Kavina Wilson and Susie Berner. We are excited to be with you guys and are looking forward to the next hour, where we're going to talk about the difference between a donor and a partner, false assumptions people may have about you and your partner, and also what commitment to your partner looks like. And if you've been with us, you know the drill. Throughout the webinar, we want to hear from you. If you have an idea or a resource, please share it with us in the chat. The little chat button at the bottom, you can click on. If you haven't already introduced yourself, we'd love to hear where you're calling from, what organization you're serving with, the ministry that you're a part of. But this is a live webinar. We can all learn from each other. So definitely share any ideas and resources and encouragement that you have with all of us. And you'll also notice with that chat, there's a blue button that says to panelists or panelists and attendees. So if you can just make sure that that's panelists and attendees so that everyone attending can see your wonderful insight, that would be great. We will also be taking questions throughout the webinar. So if you have any questions, please put those in the Q&A box. You'll see Q&A as a separate button from chat. We're going to get to as many questions as we can. We've got lots of space today for Q&A and interaction. So definitely fill up that box with your questions. And we would also love for you to help us get the word out about these free webinars. We do these webinars every single month for free. And we've got on our website, we've listed for the next quarter, the next few webinars that we have coming up. So to say thank you for helping us out, we want to send you a financial analysis tool. This helps you assess how giving has gone this last year and to think through how to improve it for the coming year. So to get that resource, here's what we'd like you to do. Follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook and post a photo of this live webinar. So if you know how to do a screenshot, take a screenshot and post that and tag Tailored Fundraising. So just at Tailored Fundraising. If you have a private account, we won't be able to see that you've done that. So Susie's going to drop in the information where you can email Kavina. Kavina is going to make sure to track and see who is helping get the word out. And then she'll be sure to email you that financial analysis tool once that's happened.
Okay, we want to start off today with talking about the difference between donors and partners. So our team has spent more than 40,000 hours coaching nonprofit leaders and ministry individuals. And when asked what their biggest obstacle is, most of them say, I need more donors. But in reality, what we find many times is that they just haven't maximized the opportunities with the donors that they already have. So at this point, we're probably all aware of the longstanding research that shows retention is much less costly than recruitment. And the same is true for financial partners. For you to acquire a new donor, it's going to cost you 5 to 6 times more than if you focused on keeping and upgrading the donors that you already have. Yet so often we see people focusing heavily on acquiring new gifts rather than being intentional with the donors that are already on their team. For those of you who joined last month's webinar on securing a second gift, you're going to hear some similarities today. However, this month we want to focus not on just that second gift, but on a lifetime of gifts, converting donors to partners by casting a vision for long-term vested relationship. We want the partner to be able to take ownership of the ministry with you. So let's look at the difference between donors and partners. A donor is somebody who gives financially with no expectation that they're going to give again or that you will even ask again. Often these are individuals that you don't have a relationship with. Sometimes a donor will give because you presented at a church or at a small group. They felt moved to give, yet they have no way of getting in touch with you. You have no way of getting in touch with The donor may have also donated to your ministry through a friend or through a family member who shared a newsletter or social media post without you specifically inviting them to hear what the ministry is all about. A partner, on the other hand, is one who specifically asked for an ongoing commitment or has shown interest in an ongoing commitment that would be either monthly, quarterly, or annually. And we believe that this should be a two-way relationship. It is imperative that your partner, as they give financially and praise for you and the ministry, you also nurture your relationship with them and their connection to the ministry. And we're going to share some practical steps in a bit to make that happen.
We want to look at a few assumptions that we want you to be aware of and think about how to overcome. The first assumption is to make sure our partners feel like partners and not donors. The first assumption is that we think that because we see them as partners and because we use the word partner in our communication, that they feel like partners. One way that this plays out is that the only time you actually reach out personally is when you need money. Okay, that is not treating someone like a partner. That's treating someone like an ATM machine. But even if you are at least communicating through your newsletters or in between asks, we almost always see donor language seep into people's communication. So we want to look at a couple of examples of language that appears like partner language, but it's actually donor language. And I'm going to ask you guys to put in the chat in a bit where you see that donor language coming through. So the first example is, thank you for partnering with me financially and for praying for me. I'm excited to share that I was able to send 10 kids to camp this month. Right? Sounds good, sounds exciting. You're showing the impact. The second one, because of your partnership, we are seeing disciples made among the nations. We couldn't do this without you. So those sound really great, and they are pretty good, but there's still a little piece in each of those that make it donor language. Anyone? Yep. Rachel picked up on it saying, I sent 10 kids. Yep. I. Yes, perfect. Good job. All right, you guys passed. Yep, we couldn't do this without you. Thank you, Kelly. So there's this tiny, tiny, subtle language that's communicating, I'm the one doing the work. And for some of you, I can feel you thinking, well, I am the one doing the work, but I want to challenge you. You are not the one doing the work. This is God's work. You are on God's team. Your partners are on God's team. We're all doing the work. You just happen to be the one there physically. So how do we start to shift that language to match that reality? Let's look at a couple of fundraising models that we hope will help with this. This first model is what we call the traditional model. Called that because traditionally it's what we've seen in missions work. So in this model, there are three elements. There's the supporter, there is the missionary, and there is the impact. Okay, they're the same similar elements we're going to see in the next model. But with this, often it's focused on the missionary, right? Who's at the center of this model? Who's connected to the impact? Who is the supporter connected to? All of that is the missionary, the missionary, the missionary. And so there's this idea that as the missionary, I have this dream and goal and this calling, but I'm going to need some supporters to help me get there. It's very us-centric. And so we want to shift away from that because there are a lot of limitations there. We're not going to dig into all of the details, but we want to shift away from that language so that it's not just all about us. It's connecting people to us and communicating we're the ones that are experiencing the impact. So how do we shift that to share that? What we want to see is the partnership model. Again, we're not going to go into all the differences here. I know right away you're going, oh, it says partner, it says leader. Because we can literally do an entire workshop on just this model. But the part that we want to highlight is that the partner and the leadership, which is you, by the way, you are the leader, that you're both connected equally to the impact. One is no more or less important than the other. And you're connected to your partnership through a relationship. Your partner is connected to the impact through communication. Okay, so I want to talk about the differences there. Communication is your newsletters, social media updates, partner meetings where you're sharing those updates personally. those are not the same things that connect you to your partner. Those are not the same things that are a relationship, right? Your newsletter connects your partner to the impact, but your investment in the relationship is what keeps the two of you connected to each other. So I want to hear from you guys in the chat. What are things that you do or you can do to build that relationship with your partner? So it goes beyond just the communication that ties them to impact, but it's really that investment in a personal relationship. One I can think of is Beth and her cookies.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, that's a great example. Valerie, personal text, checking in on them, absolutely. Evangeline, sending out Christmas cards, birthday cards, even from overseas, yes. You can never, ever, ever, ever use the excuse that you are not in person for anything ever. There is technology, there are apps, right? Coffee time, yes, asking for prayer requests. Oh, these are wonderful. Kelly made Christmas gifts with her mom. Yeah, all of these are Jeremiah Shutterfly, love it. These are all ways where you're connecting personally with your partners. Now, through that, you can still have opportunities to communicate and connect them to the impact, but I just want to make sure you're aware that that communication piece isn't the only responsibility that you have. There's a relationship that needs to be involved. Okay, so let's look at what it looks like to use true partner language in our communication. So we're going to use those same examples from before, but we're going to make the shift. The first one, thank you for partnering through prayer and giving. Your partnership sent 10 kids to camp this month. The second, because of your partnership, disciples are being made among the nations. Notice I don't reference myself at all. And it's this tiny, subtle little shift, but it makes such a huge difference. And so we encourage you, go back and look at your communications, look at the way you're talking about the ministry and yourself and see, am I putting myself in the middle there? Are we inserting ourselves where we really don't need to?
Great tips, Jenny. All right, the second assumption that we have when we all do this is assuming that our partners actually read and remember our communications with them. One of our coaches shared a story about how she was talking with a partner and realizing that they weren't reading her newsletters simply based on the questions that they were asking. And Jenny, her newsletter had at the very top of it, in every single title, it had the word Vietnam. And yet people would still ask her, so, hey, how's China or Thailand? And I know people, in Africa may have that same thing, or even South America, particularly Asia, that happens a lot because people just don't know where countries are. So don't assume that people have read it or that they even remember it. Repetition is your friend. So what does that look like practically? We want to encourage you that in every single newsletter, you should reiterate who you're serving, what organization you're working with, and what your vision is. A lot of people do this in just one brief sentence, whether it's at the top of the newsletter or at the bottom of the newsletter. What we want you to ask yourself is this question. So if this was the first newsletter that someone received, would they have any idea what this ministry is all about? And the answer should always be yes. The third assumption that we make is that our communication and relationship is linear, just like in that first traditional model that it's linear. It is not. It is not linear. You have to continue to steward and nurture your partners. Your communication should resemble a circle, which is something that I'm going to show you in just a minute. So if you want to have a sustainable ministry that isn't driven by money, you've got to invest in the donor as a person. We can't say this enough, that partnership is about relationship, and you can't have a relationship clearly without any communication. So think about it. So when you begin a relationship with someone, you're not just going to sit there in silence, nor are you going to talk all about yourself the whole time. You're going to ask questions, intentional questions, to get to know who they are, to discover their passions, and find out the kinds of things that they're interested in. And we find that obviously that this is the back and forth kind of a dialogue. So this circle that's on the screen right now is the one that I was referring to earlier. We call this the communication cycle. So when you're initially meeting with someone to talk about the ministry, you're not just going to jump right into your presentation. You're going to make a connection with them. and you're going to try to find out what their interests and passions are. And then you're going to try to connect those interests and passion to the ministry as you walk down the left side with me, as you identify a problem that you can solve together, as you offer a solution to that problem, like what are we going to do together? And then as you make an ask, and in this ask, we want you to be as specific as possible. We also want you to tie it directly to the impact that those finances are going to make. We want you to make it as easy as possible for them to partner with you. So be specific. Don't leave it to them to figure out. Most of the time, if you don't give people a benchmark, then they're going to ask you, so what is it that you need? Or, followed by potentially what is everybody else doing? So don't leave it up to them to figure it out. Offer the answer to the question before they even ask it. It makes it easy for them to be able to participate. All right, so then when they give, they're going to move out into that YMAD circle where you're reporting back to them how God used their gift. So YMAD stands for You Made a Difference, and it's a critical communication. So most of the time, this is a newsletter that's going to go out to everybody, and it answers the question, what exactly did your gift help to accomplish? The touch point is for building the relationship and letting them know that they're important. You want to talk with them and get to know them and truly be interested in their lives. This could look like a variety of different things. It could be a phone call or a video chat. It could be a text or a picture with a message. It could be a short video clip. I mean, there are endless possibilities. So YMAD and touch points alternate until we identify another problem and a solution. And then we walk back through the left side and we invite them to be a part of that, at which time we're then going to, once we get through that left side and we make the ask, they boot right back out into that YMAD cycle again. So by following this cycle, you're going to keep more of the donors that you have. And if you're not in regular communication with your partners, you need to start right now. Don't neglect the person and their interests. So simply asking questions like, what compels you to partner in the work? Or what would you like to hear about in newsletters? Those are great questions to start with. And when this circle is consistent, your partners are more connected and they feel that sense of ownership in the ministry. They also feel thanked, and their motivation to continue to give or even to increase actually goes up. A few ideas for touch points could include my favorite, food. I mean, how many of us are foodies? You know that we're bombarded with food-related shows all the time. So for example, if I were back in Thailand, I might take them to the market with me to show them a photo or a 30-second video clip of those pork chops that are there with the bristles kind of still on them. Or perhaps the unrefrigerated eggs that are literally stacked from the floor to the ceiling. Or better yet, have my husband video me as I play charades with the store clerk because I have no idea what the word for popcorn is in Thai. It's true, we actually did that, but we didn't have a video of that. That would have been hilarious. We're also obsessed with travel. So wouldn't it be great to have them experience the places that they may never travel to, whether that's a historic landmark like the bridge over the River Kwai, for example, or it could be something like an elephant sanctuary, or your family holding a tiger's tail, or maybe even going to a refugee shelter. The other things that we shared a lot were cultural differences and faux pas, because not only are these interesting, but they're often really, really funny. And then lastly, don't forget prayer. How many times are we famous for putting our prayer requests in our communications and asking for prayer, but yet we don't turn around and do the same thing and ask them for their prayer requests? So we want for you to ask them their prayer requests and also let them know that you're praying for them and exactly what you're praying for them in a brief text or in a card. Jenny does this a lot. She just writes out her prayers, and it's really encouraging and meaningful for them to know what you're praying for them. A few examples of YMAD communication could be to share how somebody's life is being impacted. And it's really great that we have all of these resources right now through social media, through video, through pictures. We could even ask that person whose life is being impacted, to share how their life is being impacted. And that could be over a short video if you're in a country that doesn't have restricted access. It could be a picture with a short little blurb on how they were being impacted, or they could literally write your newsletter for you, which is a great idea, because for those of us who've been on the field for multiple years, having somebody else write the newsletter gives us a little bit of a break. And it's also extremely impactful because the partners get to see firsthand whose lives are being changed. The other thing that you could do, we keep talking about impact, and that is true. We want to see how the people on the field are being impacted, but people, because they're in relationship with you on that bottom level of the partnership model, they care about you and they want to know what God's doing in your life or in the life of your family members. They want to know what you're learning and how you're doing. And they love, love, love to see pictures of your kids because they change so often. So make sure you're also sharing about your personal lives. We had this little thing called Kids Corner, and sometimes, it was things that we were learning, but other things were just funny things that the kids would say. We also encourage you to share what's being done and how it's being accomplished and who's being changed, because it demonstrates that you have a strategy.
And I want to highlight with this image, it's really common for people to do that left column. And then the only thing that happens after that is a newsletter, right? So this is really where we see the shift from donor to partner, is that you're staying in communication with them. I saw someone had asked the difference between YMAD and touch points. So just to reiterate that, YMAD is where you are clearly communicating, you are making a difference, right? So you're connecting them directly to that impact. The touch points can be anything else, where you're just keeping them connected and you're building that relationship. So, but going into that cycle, you should be going back to your partners and going through that left column again and saying, okay, great, we solved some problems. Here's the impact that we're seeing. And then whether it's growth or whether it's new challenges that have come up or a shift in ministry, you're going to re-identify the problem. So continually be inviting people into being a part of the solution. So that's where we see the partnership continuing, is it is not just like, oh, we asked once and we're done. No, you still have a responsibility and a privilege to continue to invite people to be a part of that work, even if they said no in the past, or even if they're already partnered. There are still things we can do to get people more engaged. Okay, I want to pause for some questions because I've seen some things pop up. Susie, what questions?
Yes. So the first question we have from Jeremiah is, how do I communicate the places that I go to in the local area without talking about
Yeah, without talking about yourself. Yeah, it's not that you can't ever talk about yourself or use the word I. Obviously, I am going to talk about myself and I am going to say, I know I got to do this. But what you want to look at is, do you need to say I to communicate that? If you do, great, go for it. But I think you'll be surprised how many times we actually don't need to talk about ourselves to still communicate the scenario or the impact or the problem. So definitely, don't feel like you can't exist at all. You do still exist, but just be very mindful, especially when you're talking about impact, that you're not making it all about the impact you are having.
Yeah, and I want to tie in with that question, Jenny. Sometimes when you first are working in a country, it's important. Your partners want to know how you're adapting to the culture. So in that context, Jeremiah, when you first arrive in a country and maybe you're learning about the culture, it would be good to share firsthand because they want to know how you're doing. But when it's tied to impact, you want to make it more of a team-focused perspective communication.
And I was going to say, how you can say I is, I know this is important to you. I know from my relationship with you that you are a foodie. And so I wanted to show you what the market looks like. Or if you're trying something new, I wish that you were here right now to try this with me. But I just wanted to let you know today that I was thinking about you, and I'm grateful for your partnership.
Yeah.
So
it's a very interesting exercise to ask yourself, how can I share this story without mentioning myself at all? And again, you'll be surprised how much you don't need to talk about yourself to still share a story.
Here's another question. This is from Keith. Is the passive language in the donor versus the partner language a problem? I've heard it's important to avoid that. So it's the idea of, I guess, using donor versus partner. Is it important always to use partner?
I'm trying to look at, is that in the Q&A? I'm just trying to get a little bit more context around the question.
Right, that's the Q&A. And Keith, maybe you want to type something in the Q&A. I think that's going back to when we talked about what the difference between...
Our examples.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we look back at those examples, so we're talking about passive versus active language, I assume.
Yes.
I'm going to scroll back up to our examples.
He says, yes, it's passive versus active.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. So like our example was, thank you for partnering. Oh, let me look at the good examples. Through prayer and giving, your partnership sent 10 kids to camp this month. So active would be is sending, right? So you're kind of making like the here and now, it's something that's actively happening, not something that kind of happened in the past. Yeah, I think 99% of the people reading your newsletters aren't communication majors and aren't going to pick up on that, but I love that you did. And yeah, I think you're right. I think making it as active and relevant as possible, like this is still happening, is definitely very beneficial. Okay, so now let's look at what commitments do you need to be making to donors and partners. The first commitment is to show gratitude. As you saw in a couple of our examples, we're saying thank you, and you should be saying thank you. With new donors, we recommend you have a clear process of thanking them for their gift as soon as possible. I think last month we talked about this, and I know we talked about this a lot, of the importance of like within 48 hours saying thank you and how much of a difference that makes for the longevity of a relationship. So have a plan in place. If you are only checking your finances once a month, you might want to consider increasing that. Because if I give today and you don't check it for another few weeks and I don't hear from you personally, I'm going to notice that. And as a donor that you want to move into a long-term partnership, you want to make sure that as soon as possible, you are responding and saying, hey, we saw this come through. Thank you so much. And again, reminding them of their value to the ministry through that gift. With partners, show gratitude every chance you get. Newsletters, thank you cards, postcards, gifts, video messages, one-on-one conversations. As Deb mentioned before, so many options of ways that we can show gratitude. So Susie's going to put in the chat, there's a list of several companies that we really enjoy recommending and working with that have newsletters that they will print and mail for you. So if you're somewhere or you just need that service, there's a couple of different options there. Same with postcards, a couple of really great apps where you can upload a picture. I had someone who does work in Africa, and they were there for like a 1-week vision trip with some other people. And while they were there, they were taking pictures, and before they even got back, their partners back home had a postcard in their hands. And so real time stuff like that makes it really easy, and it's fairly affordable, especially if you're only doing a handful. I think it's like $1 or $2 per postcard. So utilizing services that are out there to help. Greetable, I love Greetable. It's expensive, but if it's something really special, it just has this cute little box where you add pictures to it and they print it, and it's got little gifts inside that you can pick, and it's just very fun. I'm sure some of you have seen it. So getting creative and utilizing those services to show gratitude, it also just makes it fun for you and for them. For organizations or individuals with like major donors, you might want to consider expressing gratitude in larger ways, like through a plaque or a donor appreciation party or some sort of public recognition, almost like you'd see sponsorships, thank you so much to so-and-so. So if you have a very large donor that's, giving significantly to the ministry, think about, okay, how do we say thank you in kind, matching that level of generosity. Just make sure that if you're going to do something public, you're getting their permission, right? Not everyone wants to be known. Not everybody wants that to be publicized. And so making sure that you get permission for anything that's going to be going out, to promote them. The second commitment, get to know your donors. Get over any awkwardness you might feel with the people that you don't know yet, that you don't have a relationship with, and set up a video chat, set up a phone call. When it's safe, set up, or possible, set up an in-person conversation. Simply say you want to get to know them more and that you want to share personally how their partnership is having an impact. But when you connect, make sure you get to know them and don't just spend the whole time talking about the ministry and answering their questions about you, because there's this problem in the missions world where, because we've followed that traditional model where it's all about the missionary, when you sit down with people to connect, it can very easily default to it all being about you. Like I remember having to tell people well, hold on, we'll get there. We'll talk about ourselves later. We really want to get to know you. And so we had to be really proactive at creating space for people to share about themselves, because one, they were excited to hear about what we were doing. And also they felt what they were doing as lame compared to what my family was doing. And so sometimes you have to be really proactive in creating space to really get to know them. So make sure you're doing that. Ask them about their background, their current life, what interested them in partnering with the ministry. That's a great question, as Deb mentioned earlier, to get at what are their passions? What are the things that they're interested in? And make sure you're taking notes somewhere that you'll remember to find it. I think it was Evangeline who mentioned, birthday cards, so when is their birthday, their anniversary? And, is someone graduating soon? Kind of taking note of those things. Follow them on social media. If you have partners that you're not connected to on social media, see if they have a social media page and start following them. It's a really easy, fun way to stay connected in their day-to-day life, and a great way to just continue to build that relationship. All right, third commitment, stay in touch. This isn't just all front loaded, okay, once we have them signed on, we're done. No, keep that relationship going and stay in touch. Create a plan to stay in touch with partners on a personal level, at least twice a year. Okay, what does personal level mean? That means it's not a mass newsletter, but that you're personally reaching out from just me to just them. I'm going to reach out and I'm going to say, how can I be praying for you? Right? So that they know this is me really wanting to be a part of your life and not just the other way around. Something like that also matters because, again, our communication tends to feel one way, right? When you send a newsletter, how many people actually respond to your newsletter? Probably not a ton. And you may even try to say, at the end, tell us how we can be praying for you, right? Hoping to try to engage people, and you still aren't going to get a lot of responses, if any, because that's seen as one-way communication. So don't talk about yourself. Reach out to them and just ask about them so that they know that's the point of this connection. It's not just to talk about me and then I'm adding some kind of pleasantries oh, how are you? It's that's the only thing I'm asking is, hey, how are you? How's your family? How can I be praying for you? That's really key. And it's also really quick. It doesn't take that much time. You don't have to think about, what am I going to say? Just ask how you be praying for them. So staying in touch, really important. The last one is invite involvement. People don't have to commit financially to be partners. And some of you know this. You have people that are so committed to the ministry, but they're not able to give financially. Our partners have spiritual gifts. They have other resources, and we can deepen the relationship and the impact by inviting them to use that. Inviting people to be invested in prayer, giving them specific people or events that they can focus those prayers on, or using their gifts of service to serve or volunteer with you at an event. Other examples, someone's donated their lake house for a retreat. Or this truly happened, smoked pork butts and flew them from Tennessee to California to serve college students at an annual event. What a fun way to get partners involved in something they're really passionate about that can bless the ministry. So get creative, find out what people's passions are, and invite them to be a part of that impact. And imagine the impact that also has on your relationship and the ministry when they are that much more deeply connected.
All right, let's talk about the impact of turning donors into partners. First of all, it can have great long-term impact. When God provides long-term financial support, it equates to long-term impact on the field. So some of you are ministering in areas where the good news hasn't been shared before, or in countries that are closed access countries. And it's going to take a long time to see impact. When you have invested partners, that means that you have the time needed to see that impact come to light. Secondly, it provides for sustainable ministry. When you have a stable, solid base of partners, you don't have the distraction of reacting to a deficit or to a lack of funds. And so therefore, you can have a more consistent focus on the field, which makes the ministry more and more sustainable. And I love that it provides growth opportunities. When your ministry fund is healthy, then any new or additional funding that comes in actually gets to go towards growing or deepening the ministry instead of filling that deficit. It allows for vision casting and for opportunities that can expand and develop the work. So think of the outreaches that could be planned. Concerts, perhaps, that you might not be able to afford if you're running in a deficit, or events that might draw non-believers, potentially scholarships to conferences or retreats for unbelievers, or even for key leaders in the work to be developed. So again, those possibilities, like sit and dream with God, what could happen if we actually have long-term sustainable partnerships here. And finally, it's just good stewardship. We're called to be good stewards of what God's entrusted to us, and we believe that God has entrusted your partners to your care. So we want to encourage you to develop a stewardship plan and a communication calendar, because when you have a strategy and when you implement that strategy, it's vital to staying connected to your partners, to that relationship with your partners, and also connecting to the impact, which is going to then provide for the longevity, the stability, and the growth of the ministry. But also it's going to lead to their joy, to their own personal growth and development, and their fulfillment as they see how they're being used to make kingdom impact.
Amen. That's good. Okay, we're going to open up for questions again, but I also want to invite you guys to share with us in the chat. If you've had ideas that have popped up of ways that you could really invest in relationships, we'd love to hear that. If you have services that you use, like the ones we listed that kind of help you connect with your partner, share that with the rest of us. We love just kind of pulling resources and resourcing each other and supporting good companies, and encouraging that work. So yeah, feel free to share that. But any questions that are popping up for you guys around this, we're gonna pause a good bit and answer any questions that you have.
At this point, Jenny, there's no questions in the Q&A box. So feel free to put some in if you have some. And then Evangeline talked about partners giving towards student scholarships to local pastors over the last 2 years. And that's super encouraging, $6,000 for tuition. That's a very specific giving strategy that involves partners.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, here's some more questions. This is from Keith. How do you develop healthy limitations or boundaries so that communication with partners doesn't take more time than it should?
Consistency, consistency, consistency. If you put off communication with your partners, it's going to take you way more time to invest in those relationships. But if you have a weekly rhythm, it will take way less time. So we highly recommend having a weekly rhythm of just set aside time and do as much as you can within that window. So an hour a week, and just go through your partner list, start checking with people. Now, you also have to respond to all of those people when they reply. So don't reach out to all of your partners in the same week. Break it up, like just a handful of people. But when you have that consistency, again, it's smaller windows all throughout the year, you'll be amazed at how much more frequently you can stay in personal contact with people. Don't save it all for Christmas, or save it all for the summer. Split it up, spread it out so that it doesn't get overwhelming.
And
Jenny, can I share something too tiny with that? So my husband and I partner with a couple that have been in ministry for almost 40 years, and we were going to invite them over one Saturday morning, and they said, can we do it a different Saturday? And we said, sure. And they said, because we asked them why, and they said, well, once a month for 40 years we've done this. We just set aside an hour or so, just an hour to hour and a half, where we just call our partners and find out how they're doing. And their attrition rate has been super low because of that.
I was going to say too, vary the kinds of touch points. You don't always have to call somebody or video chat with them. We know those things take a little bit longer. So maybe one phone call or video chat, and then one text message or a card or something like that. You don't always have to talk to the person.
Yeah. So one of the questions that came out was, will we be able to see the slides? Someone got on the webinar late. So we will have the webinar posted on our YouTube webinar channel, correct, ladies?
Yes. Yeah, and we can share that at the end. Yeah, all of our webinars, we started posting on YouTube. So if you miss something or you're not able, the time doesn't work out, we still encourage you to register for the webinar, because there are some things that people who register might get some extra tools and resources that we don't put on YouTube. So still register, even if people aren't, you or someone else isn't going to be able to make it. But yeah, we'll definitely have the YouTube video for sure. And just a reminder, if you have questions, if you can put it in the Q&A box rather than the chat, it's a lot easier to keep track of those questions. The chat fills up and things can get lost. So please make sure your questions are going in the Q&A box.
There's a lot of great stuff in the chat box too. Thomas talks about when there's a large special gift, it's nice to send a book as a way to thank them. I love the creative. So we've got cookies, we've got books. And when you're coming from overseas, you're coming home, make sure you stock up on gifts too, to bring to your partners for when you come home. But I love the old school letters, that's great, because who receives a letter anymore? And how cool is it to receive a letter from overseas with a cool postage stamp on it? So that you have to think through ahead of time, obviously, making sure that you plan plenty of time for it to get there. But yeah, old school letters are great.
Yeah, I have this little book, it's just called Blessings. It's really small, it's super simple. And it just has like a blessing for different things. So it's like a blessing for provision. May you know the Lord as the source of peace, courage, hope, and joy. A blessing for service. May you use your health in service of God and people. And these are going to be some Christmas gifts for people, for kind of my little girls group that hangs out. But a friend of mine wrote this, and they were selling it to raise money for their church. And I bought, a handful. So be looking for opportunities of just really, simple things like this. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but it does take intentionality. It does take you thinking about your partners on a regular basis and thinking about the different ways that you can connect. I'm definitely all about handwritten thank you cards. I have a massive stack of cards at all times that I'm quick to send out. It's just those little special touches that, make a big difference. All right, what else? I know I've seen some stuff in the chat that's kind of hard to find. So Susie, I don't know if you're keeping track of this.
I am. So one question was, what are some good book ideas to give? She says she has partners in China, so that mailing might be tricky, but I know, Jenny, you just mentioned a gratitude book. I don't know if there's any other book ideas. My husband and I just received some really simple devotional, like a Christmas devotional. We always get it every year from a partner, a couple that we partner with. So sometimes just a little devotional for the holidays can be a great gift idea.
Yeah. And as Rachel mentioned, a cultural book, something that kind of helps educate them maybe a little bit, that's fun, but also informative about the culture. Love that.
I have one of my clients who is sending all of his partners Gentle and Lowly. It's kind of the hot book on the presses right now, and it's really been impactful for his quiet times, and he's referred to it in some of his newsletters. And so he thought, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and send it to all of them because it's been very impactful. But I agree with Susie too, just having a devotional. I mean, who can't use a devotional? We all can. So that's great.
Oh, that's a really long link, but that was the link that I found for Gentle and Lowly. Like, oh heavens. Yeah, I think I saw someone ask about tracking donors. My goodness, there are a million things, but Donor Elf is great. NPDX is great. NPDX is kind of the up and coming the last couple of years. TNT is a free one that's, pretty basic, but it, does what you need it to do. Yeah, anyone else, any others that you guys use, that you like, that you want to share for people to check out? I love that. I just used a spreadsheet. I'm simple. I just have my spreadsheet with my partners' names, and each week I opened up my spreadsheet and I just went down the list and I kept track of what I did. And yeah, and then when I got to the bottom of the list, I just started over and cleared my little X's. And yeah, so even a spreadsheet, you don't have to get fancy. Yep, Kelly uses the spreadsheet that she got from her coach, from her tailored coach. Yep. All right, great resources in the chat. Thank you, guys. All right, what other questions do you guys have?
Here's another one. What do you recommend when it comes to getting to know people at this time, when so much of what's on people's minds is politics and the election and a lot of unsettling things? So I guess the question is, during this particular, COVID busy, well, not busy, but Christmas season, what do you recommend to get to know people? Anything specific in this setting?
I think even, go ahead.
Good.
I was going to say, even asking the question we asked at the very beginning of the call, what do you guys do to celebrate Christmas? What are your traditions? What's meaningful to you about this holiday season? Get it off of politics as much as you possibly can. Get it off of COVID as much as you possibly can. And take advantage of the fact that it is the holiday season. Asking them what God is teaching them. Ask what they're learning at church, and ask about their family, what they're doing, how they're spending their time, what they want for Christmas. What's the first thing they're going to do when COVID restrictions are lifted? When life's back to normal again, what are your plans? What do you want to do?
Great transition out of a COVID spiral.
Yes, right.
Yep, that's a great question. Is, hey, when this is over, what are you looking forward to? I'm looking forward to my daughter and I being able to go to movie theaters again. And that's like our thing. And we haven't done that since March. Yeah, that's great. There are usually three, I'm trying to remember them now, Deb, areas where when you're trying to get to know someone, you want to ask about family, time and interests. Mm-hmm. So how do they spend their time? If they had more time, what would they do? What kinds of things are they interested in? When they have when there are volunteer opportunities, what kinds of things are they interested in being a part of? All of these things, not only does it help you get to know them as a person, but it gets to help you know them as a partner. Mm-hmm. So for example, when you know their passions, you know how to tie that into an ask better. So if a project comes up, let's say you're doing translation and someone studied, languages or as a linguist, it's like, oh my gosh, that would be such a perfect project for them to be a part of. Right? When you know their passions, you're going to know different areas that they're going to be more excited about being a part of. And so that's an important piece too. Know your partners. And I know that it's awkward, especially when it's like, okay, this person's been a partner for 10 years and we've never spoken to them. But the answer to building a relationship isn't to continue to not talk to them. Mm-hmm. So be the leader, be the good steward, reach out and start to get to know them.
It also really helps with those touch points too, because if you know that somebody is a foodie, or if you know that somebody loves travel, you can be thinking about your week. If you're planning your time well, and you're thinking about making touch points that week, you can look ahead and go, what's about to happen this week? And who would be most impacted by that? If I'm going somewhere, who can I take along with me? Who can I report back to? Or maybe we're having an event, like Jenny said, maybe we're having an event and it's about the scientific evidence for the existence of God. Who do I know that would be super excited about that event? And ask those people to pray that this number of people would come and just send a little report back. Those kinds of things, when you know who your partners are and what they're interested in, it really does make for a much more meaningful relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the last question that came in from Robert, and we've talked about this, but maybe one of you guys can summarize it. Once again, what are the techniques people are using to connect when you can't meet in person?
Mm-hmm. Video chat. Mm-hmm. You get to see our lovely faces. Having that visual really makes a difference. And the nice thing, the advantage that you guys have now that we didn't have a couple years ago is way more people know how to use video chat than they did before. So it's really, it's forced so many people to figure out the online world that there are a whole lot more people you can connect with. So instead of a video chat, that's much preferable to a phone if possible, because again, the visual helps. When I can see your face, I feel more connected to you. It also helps with accountability to make sure I'm actually paying attention to what you're saying, because I'm a multitasker. So if my camera is off right now, I've got 7 different things open. I'm playing a game on my phone. So that also helps. If that's not possible, phone call is fine, but you're probably going to want to keep that shorter. It's a little harder to have an attention span. It's not like the days where we, talked on the phone until 3 o'clock in the morning. Our attention spans are a lot shorter. So yeah, utilize video chat, and there's like a million free video chat versions. So even like, I think WhatsApp has video. Is that right? Am I making that up?
No, I think it is.
So internationally, you don't even need an international plan. You can buy Skype credits, which are super cheap to make phone calls. Of course, Facebook has video as well. Google, there's so many. Yeah. And honestly, I even utilized video with people locally that we just didn't have time to meet in person. So even if you are local and you're not meeting in person, or you can't because someone's sick, hey, no worries. We can still video chat. You don't have to lose that time. Utilize technology.
Well, yeah, I'm going to interrupt because I think this is great. Thomas Franks talks about, we had an idea of taking a Christmas or year-end trip down memory lane and sending partners of photos of memorable times you've had with them in the past.
Oh,
that's fun. That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. That's such a good idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to transition a little bit. We'll still stay on if people have questions, for a few minutes after. But wanted to hear from you guys. What is an idea that's kind of been sparked, or a conviction that you've had that you want to try to implement in this coming year? So let's reflect on what you've experienced today and just share with us what's something that's been helpful for you. As you're doing that, I also want to remind you, help us get the word out about these webinars. I know they've been encouraging and helpful to you guys, and we want it to be encouraging to lots of other people. So Susie's going to put in the chat how you can do that. Follow us on Instagram, like our Facebook page, post a photo of this webinar, which if you take a screenshot, I'm sure Deb and I are going to have weird faces, and that's fine. I can never catch a good picture. Okay, hold on. Everyone take your picture right now. I've done that so many times with taking a screenshot. I'm like, oh, they probably don't want to look at that. It's fine. So post, tag us. And then if you do have a private account, know that we won't be able to see it. So share that with Kavina via email. Yeah, help us get the word out. So thank you, Susie, for putting that in there. Oh, I did want to read, Jenny made a comment that the Kahoot and Jackbox games, she asked the question, are they doable to create for people who haven't created them before? So Evangeline, okay, good. Yeah, she's responded. So great resources there. Also, this is random, but it's been fun for me and my family. My brother found a virtual puzzle where we can go online and work on a puzzle together. And that has fed my soul during the season of not being able to be with my family for the holidays. And so that has been really, really fun. And you can upload your own picture. So it's kind of an aside, but I know that I've really enjoyed being able to connect virtually that way. Let's see, I'm going to look up the website for that.
I don't know what House Party app is. That sounds fun though. We've had family game nights over Zoom where there are things that you can play, like code names you can play categories. Pictionary is my all-time favorite because you just throw up a whiteboard and then it's hysterical to see people trying to draw with their mouse. Super, super fun.
You're really good, Deb.
I'm pretty good.
You're very good. We've done Pictionary with our coaching team. We've done games together, and she's very good at that.
You want me on your team? Let's put it that way.
You want her on your team. Yeah, that is true. Okay, once I stop talking and I can think, I'll put the little puzzle thing in there in case anyone's interested. But we do want to invite you to next month's webinar. We are going to have a panel of coaches. We're going to offer a couple of different times to help out with global time zones. But we're going to get their thoughts on fundraising while the pandemic continues, right? We're moving into the new year. COVID is still here. We still have restrictions. Countries are closed. So what does that look like to fundraise while this pandemic continues? So please join us for that. There's going to be a lot of Q&A space as well. But we're just going to be really informal, just asking the coaches to share their thoughts. So join us for that. We also, I just want to draw your attention to February. We are focusing on fundraising in a Black context, and March we're focusing on fundraising in a Latino context. So if you know other missionaries that are within those ethnic groups, definitely share that webinar's link with them so they can sign up and get some tips that are specific to those cultural dynamics. So thank you guys so much. It has been great to be with you. I hope you're walking away with some really valuable tips and a new mindset on how to convert donors into partners. So thank you so much for joining us. Everyone have a lovely day.
Bye. Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.